Hello and welcome to the Heat Check, the Miami Herald's Miami Heat show. I'm David Wilson. I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chang, our Heat beat writer here at the Herald. Anthony, what's going on?
Is this the emergency pod for Jimmy's music video appearance with Fall Out
Yeah, I
Boy?
said Jimmy's
thought,
music video appearance, Max Struess's half-court game winner last night. Should we start? Let's start with let's get the Jimmy stuff out of the way. Are you a Fall Out Boy guy? Did you
I
ever have a
was in
Fall
high
Out Boy
school.
phase? Were you? Okay, I never had.
Yeah, I feel like we all had that
honestly, I
phase,
never had an
right?
emo phase.
Oh, I had an emo phase for sure in high school, and that was like the height of Fall
We're
Out
in the
Boy.
same. We're in the right age range where that was popular when we were in high school. You're a couple years older than me, but yeah.
Yeah, that was. I mean, and Fall Out Boy, I guess, is still relevant, but they're not obviously as popular as they were maybe 20 years ago.
This is a different
50 years ago.
podcast, but the Fall Out Boy career trajectory is so bizarre to me. They went from being like the emo band to being like, we play this on previews on commercials for college football bowl games.
Yeah, that's true. They have a wide range of music.
They do.
Credit to them.
They played. I saw them at the. I think they played at the Orange Bowl like 2 years. No, they played at the NHL All-Star game. I think 2 years ago, or whatever was here in Miami last year, I guess.
This song isn't bad actually. Like as I've watched the music video a few times, I kind of it's stuck in my head now. So, but yeah, I mean, just Jimmy being Jimmy, just normal Jimmy things. What you don't expect is what he does. He's just randomly in the star of a Fall Out Boy video in a purple cowboy outfit, dancing and lip syncing the song.
So do you think because obviously when he did the haircut, do you think he was angling in some way to become, to get himself in a Fall Out Boy music video out of it? Yeah.
For Fall Out Boy. So I did some reporting on this.
Okay, you did.
And
did you write this somewhere I haven't seen?
I did. It was a short. It was like a couple of drafts with the video, but apparently Fall Out Boy, the band, liked Jimmy's media day look. They were amused by it. They reached out to his people.
They know Jimmy's a fan, I'm sure, right? Or became aware that he was a fan.
Yeah. They asked his people if he would want to be in one of their music videos. Jimmy said yes, and this was the result of it. So I think Fall Out Boy was attracted. I don't know if Jimmy was angling for this. Yeah. I'm guessing he wasn't. But it was a good move by him because now he's the star of a Fall Out Boy music video, and not many basketball players can say that.
So this was because he obviously had the hair like that, but he could just braid it up. He put it back. This wasn't filmed during that brief period where he was actually sporting that hairstyle.
I heard it was earlier this year, so over the last couple months, I guess.
But he's had it back in cornrows or whatever.
Yeah. It was like, I mean, even media day, he had it like that.
It was like a one-day thing, pretty much.
Yeah, the first practice. Yeah, the first practice.
He was back to normal.
Yeah. So it's just, I actually think someone told me that you actually have to do it exactly like that, but that you kind of have to straighten it a little bit before you braid it, like it's easier. So it's almost like one of the steps you have to do before you braid it.
That makes sense.
What I was told, so it was kind of just like a very, very smart move by Jimmy because it wasn't like he went out of his way that much. Like it was kind of something he had to do anyway, and it resulted in a music video appearance again, like for Fall Out Boy. So, just adds to the allure of Jimmy, the most interesting man in the NBA. I think he has that title. Like I don't know if there's a more interesting player.
Yeah, his like media like footprint from like the Michelob commercials where he's singing like Hall & Oates songs to obviously the coffee. But he had another. What was the commercial he had with Jaime Jaquez where they were drinking coffee? That was recent.
Well, Hotels.com, I think.
But that was Hotels.com. Yeah, I think.
And just his Instagram. His Instagram is very like if you follow his stories, it's like he's all over the place. Like coffee shops all over the country in whatever city the Heat is in. Playing dominoes.
I did have his coffee at. I'm sure I talked about this on the podcast at
tennis.
No, at F1.
Oh, okay. How was it?
Last year. It was good, and it was in like the VIP section that we were allowed in, so I could get it for free instead of having to pay like $20 for a latte or whatever it normally is there.
It is ridiculously expensive.
So that was the way to try it.
Very good. I've never tried it. I would like to try it. It's on my bucket list. Although I am upset. I interviewed Jimmy last month, and I asked him about Cuban coffee, and he said he's not a fan.
Yeah,
I remember too sweet.
I remember he did it. The first video when he did his little tour of Miami, he did it with no sugar. And I remember you were
That's blasphemy.
You were kind of you were out on Jimmy Butler from day one because of that.
He said it was too strong. Said it was too strong and it was too sweet, but he did appreciate the fact that you have to share it. He said he liked that Cuban coffee culture of sharing it.
Or you
and,
buy the one and
stuff.
you pour them. Yeah.
He said he liked that, but he just doesn't like the coffee. So we'll have to work with him on that.
I go light on the sugar when I make mine too. So I'm.
Oh, David.
Okay, let's get into some basketball now. The Heat are on fire. We are recording this. It is Wednesday afternoon, so Miami will play. This will go up Thursday morning. The Heat plays Denver tonight. Finals rematch. And the Heat really playing some of their best basketball of the season, going back to those couple of games right before the All-Star break. I guess just before we want to dive in, kind of semi-preview the Nuggets game, but more just compare the Heat where they stand right now to the Nuggets and some of the other top teams in the league. But last time we talked, the Heat were kind of getting on this little roll. There were some, I think it was right after the All-Star game, right? Yeah. So we talked about those two games before the break, come back from the break and kept it going. What have you liked, first of all, that you've seen over the last week since the break?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with the defense. Best defensive rating in February. That's their identity. Their offense still has been basically below average. I think over this 11-game streak, they're like in 20-something and are 19th in offensive rating. So not great, but they're winning behind defense. They're limiting mistakes. They're closing possessions with defensive rebounds. They've been one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the league during this stretch. Jimmy being Jimmy. Timely baskets. And their depth. I mean, their depth has shown during this because they've missed guys in almost every game, whether it's Jimmy missing a game because of personal reasons, whether it's, he's suspended and then Tyler Hero injures his knee and Rozier just came back from a knee. Like, they've been missing one or two, basically multiple rotation players this entire time. And other guys have stepped up. I mean, the best example was that Kings game a few nights ago where they have 10 available guys. Jimmy's out, Tyler's out, Rozier's out, J-Rich is out, Jovic is out.
Duncan Robinson has 11 assists.
It's just unbelievable. Duncan has 11 assists. Jaime Jaquez turns into Kobe Bryant. He has like 26 points and like 12 shots. Bam does Bam things. Delon Wright, like, first game in Heat uniform.
Yeah.
He's hit a couple big threes, had a couple steals, had a block, had like 5 assists. Just, they're very, very deep. And many of the best teams in the league, they have better top-end talent than the Heat, but in one injury, it will derail their season. Like, if Jason Tatum gets hurt, Boston is in big trouble. And yes, if Jimmy gets hurt, the Heat are in big trouble. But the Heat are in a better position to survive an injury to a rotation guy than almost every other contender in the NBA because of the way they're built.
Yeah, so I think that segues us nicely into this Denver game because for all, I mean, this Heat season has been like a lot of recent Heat seasons. One that has ebbed and flowed pretty significantly. We were pretty high on this team early on. They obviously had the 7-game losing streak last month that I think was like kind of like a rightful reason for major concern. And then since then they've won 7 of 9 since then.
9 of 11.
9 of 11. Sorry, 9 of 11 since then. And kind of feels like they are. Certainly, they feel every bit as good as last year's team that obviously went to the finals, but maybe even better suited to actually compete with a team like Denver or, Boston is certainly better than I think they were last year. So compete with Boston, a higher level Boston team. We should say they're up now to 5th in the Eastern Conference, tied with Philadelphia. So, it's still really tight with that play-in 5 through 8 range. Like they still very well might wind up in the play-in, but they're playing much better basketball. They might, right now it looks like they should be able to dodge the play-in. But what do you feel like is the biggest reason?
Hold on, as I close this curtain here.
That was fun.
I have lines in my face.
Yeah.
I think, as I'm off camera, I think.
Yeah, biggest reason this team can play at a higher level this year.
Yeah, I think I think they just have a better roster.
Yeah.
Which is like boring, but it's the obvious answer, but that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Like, yes, they lost Max Strus, they lost Gabe Vincent, 2 starters during that finals run. You would think like they wouldn't be better, but they basically lost those 2, eventually lost Kyle Lowry when they traded him. And they added Jaime Jaquez, who is one of the best rookies in the NBA and has been one of the best players in the team this season. And obviously they added, Terry Rozier, who he's an upgrade over Kyle Lowry. Whether you think was worth a first-round pick or not is another question, but he's an upgrade over Kyle Lowry. DeLon Wright now, he's a playable guy. Yeah. Josh Richardson, which I know he's hurt, and we don't know when he's going to come back at this point, but he's also just a really good depth piece too off the bench. Like, they're just a deeper, better team. And now Jovic is playing. Like, last year he was out of the mix. He got hurt. Didn't really play down the stretch. Now he's an option. So I just think they have just more depth, more functional depth, where they could play big with Jovic or Kevin Love and Bam, or they could play small like they did last year at power forward, or even Jimmy at power forward. Mm-hmm. They have a dynamic scorer that actually puts up shots in Terry Rozier, who can put pressure on the rim, could take pull-up threes, when he's given space up in a pick and roll, when he gets a screen. So I just think they're better overall. And I think it's weird to say because we've seen like the ups and downs of this defense this year. And at one point I was doubting whether they could actually be in elite defense during that, when they were losing those games last month. I thought, their personnel wouldn't lead to an elite defense, but they've actually been better than last year on defense. They're 7th now in defensive rating. You take away that 7-game skid. I know that's not fair, but if you take away that 7 games losing streak, they're probably a top 5 defense this year. So they've been very, very good on defense. Obviously, a lot of that is zone, especially recently, again, like last year. But they've shown the capability of really locking in and winning behind their defense, which I think is really important. And I think Duncan Robinson has improved on defense. Like, you've seen him be less of a liability. Tyler Hero has improved on defense. It's
kind of crazy. In some way, Duncan Robinson might be the biggest difference on this team from year. Like, they have a lot of, like, obviously, like, Jaquez. I guess probably Jaime Jaquez is the single biggest difference on this team, just adding a guy who immediately is one of the, 75 best players in the league or something like that. I don't know if that's, that even feels like it might be a little conservative, but, it's certainly like a guy who's in the, a no doubt high level starter. But Duncan, who, and obviously he's replacing Strus to some degree, but a guy who was, his ceiling was always what was so tantalizing about him, right? And he is playing better right now than he did in the bubble season that basically got him that contract. Like, the Heat paid him that contract because of what he did that year, and he's now, it's been a rocky road there, but did you ever think you would see Duncan Robinson have like 11 assists in a game? Like, it's pretty unbelievable.
I think he should be getting more love for most improved player. I don't think he's not going to win the award, but it's weird how he's not even being mentioned for it.
Yeah, I think it's because he used to be good, and like it's almost like comeback player, because it felt like his career was like on the ropes a little bit. He was obviously always going to hang around because he's a good shooter, but he was not a rotation player for most of last year.
What was like considered one of the worst contracts in the NBA for the last few years is now a good contract. Like,
he's playing to that contract. You can you should ever be paying a guy who's kind of a one-way player that kind of money, but players of his ability get that kind of money, and he's playing as well as you would hope.
In 2 years, let's say, I think is it next year or maybe the year after is his final year of his contract, but when he's a free agent, if he continues playing at this level, he's going to get paid that again probably. Yeah, at least that, especially when as the cap continues to rise. He's shooting 41% on threes this year on 7 attempts, and he's doing the passing. He's averaging three assists a game, career high. He's better on defense. He's finishing better on the rim. Just a much improved player. So I think that's been a big part of it. I think one thing that gets maybe lost a little bit because there's so much other stuff going on is this team wins the minutes now and Bam is on the bench. Last year, that was such a big storyline of they can't survive those minutes. Like, can you just lose by like he's got to score by 4 points during those
I know,
minutes,
instead of like
25.
12. Yeah.
And Cody Zeller helped a little bit, but then in the playoffs, Cody Zeller kind of was out of the rotation. He was kind of unplayable. His minutes weren't good in the playoffs, so they were kind of playing with no real backup center. And now Kevin Love has really established himself in that role. And they're actually, I'm not saying they're better without Bam Adebayo, but like plus minus wise, they've been better with Bam on the bench. Like they're not only winning those minutes, they're dominating those minutes. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah, and that speaks not just to the upgrade at the backup center spot, but just the overall depth improvement.
Yeah. So that's important because you can have that significant of a drop off. I mean, you remember that season-ending loss in Game 5 in Denver last year. I think beginning of the fourth quarter, Zeller was in there, and that's basically where the Heat lost the game. I think they were outscored like by 8 points, 10 points in the first few minutes before Bam had to come back in, and then the Heat ended up losing. So that's really important. So I would point to the depth. I would point to the back. Again, part of that depth is the backup center spot. Terry Rozier. Now you have a guard that you could score 20, 25 points on any given night, and you wouldn't be surprised. Like it's a point guard, and I think DeLon Wright's going to fit in really well also. And also not an improvement on last year, but just the fact that we now know, because over this 11-game stretch, he's kind of turns it on, that Jimmy, it's still Jimmy, because there were questions. All the advanced metrics were down. His defense didn't look as good. He wasn't finishing as well around the rim. The numbers were down across the board. He's back. Jimmy is back. He turns it on. It's Jimmy, as he said a few days ago, it's that time of the year. All of a sudden, 95th percentile, estimated plus minus. Advanced metrics love him again. He's shooting 57% from the field during this 11-game stretch. 10 of 19 on threes. Now he's like
one
of the best
funny. He's like so efficient and like that he can have, like you said, the advanced metrics 3 weeks ago didn't like him, and now
I love him.
They love him because he can just, the way he plays, he can have a stretch where he takes like across 5 games, he takes like 30 shots and scores. I don't remember how many games did I say? 5 games. He could take 30 shots and score. I don't know, like 160 points or something. Yeah.
I mean, it's when you see Jimmy having those like 25 points on 10 shots, like that is when Jimmy is on, because that means he's getting to the free throw line, getting those, drawing fouls, being aggressive. And I just think the 3-point element too that we've seen in stretches during the first few years of his Heat career, but this year where it's been kind of consistent, I think he's hit a 3 now in like 13 or 14 consecutive appearances, which is a career high for him. I mean, he's shooting 50.4% from the field, 44.8% on threes, and 85.9% from the foul line. I'm not saying he's gonna get 50, 40, 90 because he'd have to basically make all his free throws to get there.
Yeah.
But even 50, 40, 85. I mean, that is.
I mean, the 40, we never thought we would see that again.
No, and it's not on high volume, but it's like 1 or 2 game. It's still like that's a shot that
he's averaging over 1 a game this year, probably, or close to it at least.
I would imagine so. I would imagine so because he's averaging 2.2 a game. So
2.2 attempts.
Yeah. 2.2 attempts per game.
He's averaging exactly 1 make per game this year. 1.0. Right. I don't know if it's exactly 1. So
yeah, 1. Yeah. So I mean, it's Jimmy can still lead you to the promised land, and maybe it is an improvement because Jimmy wasn't Jimmy in the finals last year. I mean, he wasn't Jimmy for the final 2 rounds really. Like he still got to the finals after he sprained his ankle. He just wasn't himself.
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple of moments in the Boston series, but that was mostly Caleb, right? Like. And the depth, I think when you talk about the depth, the depth is nice to be able to throw out a bunch of different. We talked about the depth a lot last week and the way they can play a bunch of different styles. I think the Kevin Love being really good as a backup center is pretty huge for this team. That's the single biggest depth upgrade I think they have. Terry Rozier over Kyle Lowry might wind up being the biggest like 1-for-1 swap update they have because they just had a guy who wasn't kind of afraid to shoot, and now, like you said, a guy on any given night can get you 25. But the way the depth is really going to help this team is, Jimmy ran out of steam. I mean, I'm sure part of it was the ankle, but we've seen it every year he does one of these runs, whether it was the bubble run where he, obviously other injuries happened, but by the last game, he had 40, I think, in game 5 of that series, and then game 6, he was out of gas. Or the year they lost to Boston, he takes that 3 at the end of the game of game 7, which, I still kind of stand by that shot, but I'm sure there's some part of him that was like, if we play 5 more minutes of this game,
I'm done. Right.
I'm kind of out of gas. So, and like you said, last year, the injury played a part, but he was not great in the finals, certainly not compared to what he was early. So he's been able to kind of coast for, I don't know, the first 3+ months of the season. And, this team still might wind up with a top 4 seed, and he's going to be, I think, a lot fresher than he was come playoff time last year. Where, we talked a lot about how his season last year was as good as he ever played, pretty much, in the regular season.
Yeah, and you just look at, again, going back to the Sacramento game when he didn't play.
Yeah,
they're running offense through Jaime down the stretch. They have other guys now they can run offense through. I'm not saying you're going to throw the ball to Jaime in the post and let him work in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, but it is an option. He's proven that he can be very efficient.
When you look at the schedule on ESPN, they always put leading scorer, leading rebounder.
Yeah.
Jimmy is the leading scorer in, I think, less than half of these games this year, which, obviously he's obviously missed a lot of time, but, the last stretch, Bam's the leading scorer in a bunch of those games. You got Jovic, like you said, Jaime's had some games. It's just they're much more multidimensional where, Jimmy cannot play, and it's not a big deal.
Even though I think they're still 20th in offensive rating this year, doesn't it feel like the ceiling of this offense is higher? It just feels like
they
have more ways to
even
go.
Even some of these better offenses they've had in the last couple of years, because it was either they were so reliant on the 3, but there were some years where just once a game they would go 7 minutes without being able to score.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like they have those stretches as much this year, at least not during this recent stretch.
Yeah, it just feels like they have more.
I think Hawk is a really big part of that, because it's just one more guy who can get before it was Jimmy in the regular season could be weird and have stretches where he kind of refused to shoot.
Yeah, and then Bam goes cold, the jumper doesn't fall.
And then Bam was never a natural scorer. So if Tyler was out and Jimmy was not,
engaged.
I don't know. I never know the best phrase to use. They were out of options. Now, Hawk has just one more guy to get that shot. He's doing the Tyler Hero thing from the 6-man Tyler Hero season.
Yeah. Can we look at the standings real quick, because we've talked a lot about them, obviously trying to avoid the play-in tournament, but they have a shot realistically to get up all the way to 4. They're 5 now.
Yeah, they're a game and a half behind New York. I expect them to avoid the play-in at this point. But you never know with this team, because they could just have another 4-game losing streak at some point. But the schedule's still really easy, right? They still have one of the. I think when last time we discussed kind of the schedule and all that kind of stuff, they had the 2nd or 3rd easiest schedule left. I'm sure it's still. I haven't looked.
Yeah. Right now, according to Positive Residual, which takes into account opponent win percentage and also just rest advantage and all that. They have the 4th easiest schedule.
Yeah, Tankathon has the same thing, which is just win percentage. So,
yeah.
Orlando has the easiest. So, and they're one of the teams chasing Miami now. So, they'll be in the mix. But I expect the Heat to avoid the play-in, which obviously would be better than last year. And yeah, like you said, if they can get up to the top 4, they haven't been top 4. Other than the year they were the 1 seed. Top 4 hasn't happened a lot for this team during the Jimmy Butler. I think only once, right? I think it's just the year they were the 1 seed, because the bubble year they were 5th.
They were 5.
Then the year after the bubble, when they lost to Milwaukee, what were they? 7?
Probably something like that. Yeah.
And then obviously last year they were in the play-in. So, they got a shot. They still play the Knicks one more time, so that'll be a huge game.
It'd be fun if it's it's a 5-4 matchup between Heat-Knicks in the first round, and then you face Boston in the second round. You face the 1 seed like that. I don't want to sound like Heat Twitter, but I have to think the Celtics are more fearful of the Heat than the Heat are fearful of the
Well, yeah.
Celtics at this
We've
point. Like,
said this a lot over the last couple of years. Is there anyone that he's scared of in the East?
No, I as a casual, like as an objective observer, I would say the only team, if I were the Heat, that I'd be scared of is Boston. I'm not scared, but just a team that I don't know if they could beat. The others, I mean, Milwaukee has a lot of issues. Cleveland, I kind of buy Cleveland more than most, but I still think in a playoff series, the Heat could win that series. Like, I don't think it'd be easy, but I think the Heat could win that one. Obviously Philly, you don't know with Joel Embiid, and even with Embiid, like, he have proven they could win. You know, they could beat them.
Yeah.
Boston's the only one. Like, if Boston's healthy, I mean, they're one of the best teams in recent history. Really, when you look at their roster, like their starting five is incredible. So that's the only team, and it's amazing to say because the Heat have been like 7th and 8th all season East. But that's truly like the reality is like the only team that if you're the Heat that you're probably not big underdogs, but like a clear underdog against is Boston.
Yeah. I mean, again, like you talk about them being like a 7-8 for most of the year. If you throw out that 7-game losing streak, and again, you can't just do that. But like, they were 5th place, I think, before that, 4th place before that skid started. So, it's kind of that could go down as a really weird little stretch of this season if this team winds up being a 4 or 5 seed and playing really well. Because I think it's hard not to be pretty optimistic about this team right now, and it's hard to and I say right now because. Again,
they'll lose the next 6 games.
Yeah, like that's kind of been the story of the Heat for the last couple of years. But come playoff time, it kind of ends up not mattering that much. Before we wrap up, just this Denver game, obviously, as we mentioned, finals rematch. I just saw Thomas Bryant will be allowed in the building to get his championship ring. I kind of didn't realize that suspended players weren't even allowed in the building. Figured they could like go watch back in the locker room or whatever, like an ejected player in a baseball game. But what is like the number one thing you're looking for? Like what are you gonna be having a closest eye on on Thursday night in Denver?
I would just say the defense because the Nuggets have a really good offense, right? So I would say just like how the defense matches up against them this year. They struggled against Denver. I mean, they all things considered, they were decent against, defensively. It was more the offense in the finals, but they really had no answer for Jokic. And obviously, I don't think nobody has an answer for Jokic.
Nobody has an answer. Yeah, exactly.
But can they, what does Denver have? Actually, Denver's 10th best offense, so a top 10 offense. Like, how does that defense look against that unit? And also, like, just how this team is known for the culture, all that stuff. Like, this is a tough game. This is the final game of a long trip.
Yeah, we've said a lot of times. I don't think the Heat have ever won this game.
Right. So I think we'll learn a little bit about this team, this game. It's only one, it's obviously only one game, but this is a tough situation. They can go in there and win this and cap a perfect trip against a good opponent. That's going to say something. So, and the Heat has caught a break. I will say this, like the Heat has caught a break this trip because they faced New Orleans on the second night of a back-to-back.
Yep.
They faced Sacramento on the second night of a back-to-back. And now Denver will be in the second night of a back-to-back tomorrow. They play tonight. So the Heat have a little bit of an advantage. And I know it's in Denver and it's the altitude and all that, and they're not used to it, but Denver will be playing in the second night of a back-to-back. So there'll be a shot there for Miami to take this one.
All right, we can wrap things up there. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chang. Check out his writing about Jimmy Butler's music video career. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think we covered it all. I just hope that we're not the jinx, because every time we say like either things are going bad, they start winning, or if we say good, so we'll see if we have that effect again.
And as I mentioned, that's the story of this Heat team, I think. You can follow me on Twitter at DVWilson2. Nothing much for me. As I said last week, I'm popping back on the Panthers beat a little bit here and there.
Best team in South Florida. We got to bring back the Panther minute.
We're shaping up for a potential another good spring here in South Florida, because if the Heat can keep this up, the Panthers are certainly going to be in the mix. I know hockey is weird, and they might win the President's Trophy and lose in the first round, but we got two good teams here in South Florida, which is a good thing, because the Hurricanes, which have been like secretly the team that I've been hyping up over the last couple of years, is like the real saviors down here, not having the best season.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I haven't watched them much, honestly.
Every time I look at a box score, they lose. Like, it's just. When's the last time they won a game?
I know. Yeah. All right. Thanks as always for listening. We'll talk to you guys next week.